It's going live.
G'day, listeners. Welcome to Barkarati, the sailing podcast. My name is Jordan Spencer. It's that time of the week where I get to hang out with some really cool sailors and genuinely unfortunately, with my two idiot mates. So first off, let's bring in Mr. Brett Perry.
Greetings, Exalted One.
BP.
Good evening. Being the intense researcher that I am, we're coming up to the 100th episode. I've worked off our analogy of 23% serious, 100% of the time. Obviously, I need to put those numbers in a calibration, and I've worked out we're at 19% for the entire.
We need to be serious.
So we've just got to be careful. We've only got 4% left.
Okay.
Before we go over those parameters, so just be aware of that, listeners.
I think we'll be okay. Okay. Let's bring in the other bloke.
He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr.
Mr. Nick Bice.
Sailing season's almost coming to an end in, Australian terms, that is.
Southern Hemisphere.
As in the Southern Hemisphere. The summer's almost up, and that's a lot for yachting, which has been, I must say, a good summer of sailing.
Well,
for everyone.
Yep. Where I live, of course, it doesn't get cold.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Shit. It was like I wrote this script. Go on.
You know, all you mongrels are coming up here in the winter. You know you're all coming up here.
We are planning it, so don't worry.
Yeah. Actually, on that, I'll just get in early. The Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race starts this Friday. So we're going to air, we're recording on the 28th. So it'll be the second, Good Friday, basically. There is a live stream if you go to brisbane-to-gladstone.com. Live stream from 11 o'clock, GMT plus 10. So if you look at Greenwich Mean Time plus 10 and work out 11 o'clock, then the reason I'm bringing it up is two reasons. Obviously, I'm doing the commentary, but two...
We get to listen to you for 3 days.
That's the forecast. The forecast is rock solid glamour. It's going to be a race record, boys. It's going to be, at the moment, it'll be worth tuning in because it'll be a solid pumping 20 plus at the start, southeast. So
nice.
Sort of 110 to 120 beam reach, and then building to 30. It's just a day and a half of just sending it. So it's going to be...
Being the meteorologist you are, you've obviously nailed it.
Of course.
A week out.
Now, I must
got
say,
the Sydney
Jordan,
Hobart wrong by an hour from 3 weeks out. So
I watched your interview or your little mosh up with Nick and Grant and Warro.
Yep.
Very nice, by the way.
Yep.
Now, where were you recording that from? Because when we do our podcast, for example, we record it. You're sitting in your... basically in your lounge room, and we get to see your wife walk past every now and then, which is always a bit of a surprise.
She doesn't
but
wear
you
much,
locked
does
yourself in a room. What are you trying to do?
I was in a little suburb just to 20k to the north of Coffs Harbour. We were having a bit of romantic time, and I had to jump out of the
rack.
The rack.
out of the romantic time. Oh, come on, move on. Let's go.
Well, good news for the listeners. We're recording this, so when you see a little something going past the screen behind Jordan,
video recording it. We'll put it on the YouTube. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway,
Jack, don't walk behind the computer. Right, boys. This one will go down in history as one of our most important episodes. That's my gut feeling coming into this one. We have been talking about stuff going on in the Etchell class for a while and alluding to it. We are going to sit down and actually analyse this, and we're going to do it a couple of times. There's a reason for this. Barkarati exists to bring people into the sport of sailing. The Etchell class is probably one of the preeminent sailing classes in world sailing, where you are seeing the best sailors go head to head. We've worked out that if you want to win in an Etchell class, as you get older, you need to grow a moustache. And at the moment, we're potentially watching this fabulous class implode. And there's got to be a lesson for every class in sailing right here. So what we wanted to do, we recognise there are multiple sides to what has gone on, but our easiest access is to the president of the International Etchell Class of Australia, Mark Roberts, and he is going to join us and talk about that side. For those who are vehemently opposed to the Mould 11 and think there's blatant cheating going on, we will talk to people from that side, and we get the emails, we read them, we know that you're quite upset. And then we're going to try and talk about exactly what's going on, how it's going on, what is happening, and try and get the answers. So Mark, as I said, is the president of the class in Australia. He's talking to us in that position, not as a sailor, although he just won the New South Wales State Champs and he sails with Benny Lamb and Will Ryan, so a couple of snoozers there. And very passionate about the sport, very passionate about the class. So let's please welcome to our show, Mr. Mark Roberts. G'day, mate.
G'day, boys. How are you?
Excellent.
Fergus, good to have you on. And I'll just apologise straight away. I have been dining with a good mutual friend of ours, Carlin Howard, this evening, who has put me onto a few stories. But for the beauty of the show, we probably won't expose those, so I'll just be quiet.
Thank you, Bicey.
All right. Okay, so let's kick straight into the critical thing. We saw an announcement come out of the international class on the 10th of March stating that World Sailing is not approving mould number 11. Mould number 11 is the one in Australia. I think Pacesetter Yachts build the boats out of mould number 11. 25 boats have come from that. In the statement, it says quite clearly that the boats measure, all the boats have measurement certificates, but the mould wasn't registered with World Sailing, therefore it becomes an illegal mould and those boats do not count. How have we got to this position, Mark? Can you give us the history of what's going on from the perspective of Australia?
Yeah, sure, Jordan. Look, the history is quite convoluted in many respects, and I come into this 10 years after, nearly 11 years after the mould was actually built. And a lot of understanding of what occurred back then needs to be understood in the context of where the class was at the time and where the class management was at the time and where it is today. So that Mould 11 was essentially built in 2010 after the Australian Association, who owns the mould, sought permission to replace its existing mould. What then happened was that up until that point, all previous moulds, and there'd been obviously 10 previous moulds, had been built from plugs. And your listeners will understand the difference between a female mould and a male plug. And the three manufacturers at the time, there was one in the United Kingdom, which was Heritage. There was one in America, Ontario, and then the Australian Pacesetter manufacturer. Pacesetter had owned an earlier mould, which all the Australian boats had been built from. And when it came to them asking for permission to build a new one in 2010, there was a decision to be made. The Australian Association wanted to replicate the Heritage mould. So they wanted to build the same mould that had been built in the United Kingdom. The thinking being, if we had two of the same mould, by the time the third, Ontario, came to replace their mould, we'd be in a situation where we would have three of the same moulds essentially producing boats which are pretty similar. for their own reasons at the time, the class decided to go against that idea. And instead of allowing that to occur, they made a decision that the Australian boat was to be built from plug number 2. And plug number 2 had been used to build the other 2 moulds, the Ontario mould and the Heritage mould. However, a further decision was made, and that was that they didn't want to send the plug over to Australia, which had been what they'd done in 1995. They built the previous mould. And instead of doing that, they decided to scan data and send the scanned data instead. The original idea had been that they would scan the plug itself and send the scan of the plug to Australia. However, because of difficulties in scanning the plug, because of the quality of the plug, they instead decided to scan 3 boats. And the scan data they had for those 3 boats was historical. Some of it had been done in 2005, 2006, etc. And they sent the scan of the 3 boats over and said, build a boat that fits within the scan of the 3 boats. And it's from that point on, really, and maybe it was earlier than that, but it's from that point on that I think the writing was on the wall of where we're going to end up today. There's a dispute in the history at this stage as to what I'm about to say next, and it's essentially this. The data that the Australians received was not of a quality that permitted them to build a plug from that data because of the absence of data in certain parts of the boat, the shear line, the garboard, the fillet, etc. And so there was a necessity to supplement that data with scanning from other boats. So as I said, and I'll be upfront about this, there is a controversy surrounding this part of the story, and I can't resolve it for you guys tonight. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just conveying what has been told to me and what I've read in materials. So at this point, the Australian Association with the builder, they have a plug built from the scanned data, which they've created, and they then build a mould, which is mould number 11, which is in around 2011. And they then build a boat from that mould. In fact, they build 2 boats from that mould. And in accordance with an arrangement with the class, they then scanned a boat from that mould and sent the scan of the boat as well as the scan of the plug over to the international class and said, this is what we've got. There's some controversy at this stage again as to what that reveals and whether there was some issues with the boat even at that early stage based on the scanned data. The class, to resolve that, decided to use their class measurer to provide a report to the governing body to say, what do we do with this? The class measurer at the time, a fellow by the name of Dennis Hayward, produced a report saying, I'm happy that these boats are Etchells and measuring as Etchells. And that's in 2012. From that point on, nothing further is heard until about 2016, when there's some further controversy in the class regarding the garboard area of these boats. And the class then embarks on another process of trying to resolve that by taking measurements of various boats. And it's discovered that the Australian mould, or the keel root of the Australian mould, is out of place by about 12 mils. The class then resolves that by instructing the association and the builder to move the keel root 12 mils, which is what they do. And then again, nothing further is heard until 2020. And in 2020, after Ian Murray and Rich Ellison and Colin Beasley won the Worlds, there were some noises being made in relation to what was perceived to be a speed difference in their boat. That gave rise to an investigation within the class. And we get to where we are today in relation to the mould. Where things have gone a little bit belly up, so to speak, is in what you've just read then, being the ruling of World Sailing. And that is that there is controversy over whether or not the mould was ever approved. Again, trying to be as unbiased as I can be, World Sailing don't have any record of their predecessor having gone through the approval process. And that approval process existed under the building licence. It had nothing to do with the Australian Association. It was something that the builder was required to do under their building licence with ISAF to have the mould approved. And that has resulted in some questions being asked as to what happened back then. The answer is I don't know. I don't know what, if anything, was sent to Wellwood Sailing or ISAF at the time, and whether in 2012 ISAF had delegated their responsibility of approval to the class. These are the things that are still waiting to be determined, but that's where we get to today. So there's a lot of information there, which I appreciate. There's a lot of convoluted history, and I've tried to summarise it as quickly as I can, but it is really quite difficult, and there are no easy answers here.
So is there no trail of emails or trail of, in those days, it would have been emails still, so no trail or questions being answered as to, you know, whether we're right or wrong here, or, you know, are we doing it right? I mean, surely there must be something there.
There was no instructions per se sent with the data that was received by Australian Association and by the builder. But again, I wasn't there, so I'm only saying what I've been told. The suggestion is that it was quite clear as to what was going to be required. And what was to be required was that the builder and the Australian Association build a boat that fitted within the three boats, the scans of the three boats. And to provide a scan to the international class for them to draw a comparison to see whether it fit within that criteria. And that's where the differences of view start coming into play. So I don't think there's much controversy in relation to that aspect of it. It's where we go from there.
All right, before we go where we go, the allegations, and we get emails, the allegations that we get, particularly from North America, that we get in our emails, correlate a lot with what Andy Cummings said in his note that went out in January 22, that the Mould 11 boats produce hulls that have a longer waterline, have less rocker, are flatter in the middle and fuller in the ends. My question, because I know these boats measure according to the class rules and have measurement certificates, how much tolerance in your measurement rules are there? Like we see these, and we've got this email, these words in about 20 different emails. When someone says, oh, it's a longer waterline or less rocker, is it 1 mil difference? Is it a foot difference? I mean, what are they, and how do they know that? That's what I want to know.
Okay, so if I answer the last question first, which is how do they know that, which is probably the easiest one. Before any of this blew up, the class had decided to undertake its own audit, because there has always been, for as long as I've been in the class, at least, there's always been questions about Etchells being slightly different from one another, and there's no doubt that they are all different from each other. Even boats from the same builder are different in some respects from each other. So the class had decided to undertake an audit whereby there was going to be a scanning of 2 boats from each of the manufacturers, so that there could be a proper analysis in relation to this very question: how are they different, if at all? And if they are different, by how much? Then COVID occurs. So this all happens at the start of COVID. So rather than 6 boats being scanned and analysed, only 1 boat is scanned, and that is the World Champions boat, Ian Murray's boat. So that is the only boat that is scanned at the beginning of 2020. What they then did was to compare the scan from the 2020 scan against scans that had been done by the class back in 2005 and 2006. So that was the comparison that they've drawn. So the scans are about 15 years apart, at a time when obviously there was different technology.
Which is interesting. Sorry, Mark, I've got a question. Bicey, you'll be up to all of this with what you've been through. Let's talk about, you just raised it then, Mark, about technology. Are we seeing a technology growth period that has potentially caused this? I mean, could that be the issue, Bicey?
No, well, as you were saying this, Mark, the first thing I thought about when I scanned a boat actually in 2004 was using a wand. So you basically set up train tracks on the either side of the boat, and then you have a measurer and he's going with the wand and he takes scans at each station, right? But you don't do that now. You take a scan as a 3D model with the technology that is there. So going back to 2004 or 2005, when you're using a wand, if you're 10 millimetres one way or the other, it's a big difference.
That's my point.
Huge difference. So that it's not comparing apples with apples is kind of my take on it.
Oh, see, I mean, you're certainly a lot more expert in this than I am, and I don't profess to have any expertise in this area at all. The way it's been explained to me is that when we're talking about scanning, we're talking about the accumulation of point cloud data. In other words, just a point in space.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what we're really talking about in terms of the technological advances in the past 15 years is your ability to have more accuracy in the recording of the point cloud. So I can't remember what it was 15 years ago. I think that had confidence levels in the data of up to, and I could get this wrong, so excuse me if I do, 2 or 3 mils. I think it was something of that magnitude. We're now talking about confidence levels in the data of 0.2 of a mil.
Yeah.
So there is a much greater ability to be accurate in the accumulation of the data here. So, look, that's certainly one of the issues that the class is facing, namely that they have sought to compare the scan data from 2020 against the scan data from 2005 and to to analyse that and to draw conclusions based on that. The concern that we have had as an Australian association, and I don't seek to speak on behalf of the boat builders, and I won't. The concern that we've had as the Australian Association is we need more accurate information. This is an incredibly serious, significant step in our class, and before we pull the trigger and do anything too outrageous and too draconian, we must be certain about the information that we're debating, and we have to have an accurate set of data. And I'll come back to that. No doubt you boys are going to ask me down the track, what are we doing from this point forward? And that's something I'll tackle. But certainly that has been the concern to date, that we're really, as perhaps Bicey's talking about, I'm not 100% sure we're comparing apples with apples.
So then the question is, what are the tolerances within your measurements? Do you know off the top of your head? Is that something?
They're large tolerances.
Okay.
I'm not a boat builder, but I'm told by those who are boat builders that the tolerances are, even in terms of boat building tolerances, having regard to when these boats were first designed, they're significant, and we're talking about 30 mils.
Right. Okay.
So when we're an Etchell, when it's measured, is measured at stations, and there's 10 stations along an Etchell hull. Not surprisingly, every 3 feet you find a station, and at the front of the keel is referred to as station 6. At the aft of the keel, station 6. Front of the keel, station 3. The aft of the keel, station 6. One of the points you raised a moment ago, Jordan, was that the Mold 11 boats are said to have a flatter rocker. Now, what the measurements that we have of the boats reveals is that the Mold 11 boats are at one end of the tolerance, obviously the flatter end of the tolerance. The Heritage is at the other end of the tolerance, quite literally at the other end of the tolerance, and then the other boat, the Ontario, sits right in the middle. Now, the debate here is really, in my view, it's an ideological debate about what is an Etchell shape, because there is no question and there is no debate, and the class accepts these boats actually fit within the class measurement tolerances. What they, however, next say is that that's true, but that in itself is not enough. There has to be an association with, for want of a better word, an official shape. And the Australian boat differs, in their view, too much from the official shape. The next thing you're going to ask me is, what's the official shape? And the answer to that is, I don't know. And the class has never identified what the official shape is. Some people might say, well, the official shape is plug number 2 because we've got the 3 previous moulds came from that plug. Plug number 2 derived from a mould that had been produced from plug number 1. And there is almost no debate that boats produced from plug number 1 produce boats which are different from those produced from plug number 2. Those who say that the official shape is plug number 2 perhaps run into some difficulty because when we were sent the scanned data, we weren't sent the scanned data of plug number 2, we were sent the scanned data of 3 boats. And then the question is, well, is the official shape somewhere in the middle of those 3 boats? And then I guess the question is, well, if you make that assumption, what do you then do with the tolerances under the rules?
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Like, so I've sailed Etchells, but I'm not an Etchell guy. And the Etchell class is not the only one that exists with tolerances, you know. So I can tell you, for example, we know the Fin class, within their tolerances, they have had a new design, the Fantastica design, which fits within the tolerances. We saw the same thing with the Star class. We've seen. I mean, I can sit here and name lots and lots of classes.
I think just to jump in, Jordan. Yeah, all the Fin guys, the Star guys, and knowing the likes of 1K, for example, are trying to optimise every single mould or tool to its nth degree. But this is not the case that we're talking about right now, right?
My response is just looking at from the outside, looking at, well, if it measures, what's the issue? I don't get it.
Because the tolerances in the rules,
which is too great,
are quite. They're only measured at certain points. So we're talking about, what we're talking about at the moment is 3 critical stations. So every 3 feet or so, you've got a measurement. And the argument is, well, that in itself is too crude. Those who are from that school of thought say that it was never intended that the tolerances under the rules were meant to be standalone measurements, that they were simply to look for manufacturing defects from boats from moulds that had already been approved by the class, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's where the debate lays.
So then clearly, if this was done on purpose as a cheater boat, which has been alleged, then these boats, Mould 11 boats, would have a record of dominating the world, so I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah, no. So I know that I'm right in saying that the 2018 Brisbane World, so that's 8 years after the mould came into production, that was the largest concentration of new Australian hulls or Mould 11 hulls at the Worlds. And there were 94 boats in that World Championships. Mm-hmm. And the results of the Australian boats in that World Championships, and I've just actually jotted those numbers down because I thought you might ask this, were 5th, 13th, 15th, 22nd, 37th, 41st, 46th, and 63rd. Mm-hmm. That regatta was won by a Heritage boat. A Heritage also came second, and then the next Heritage was 4th. Generally speaking, these Australian-produced boats, not exactly a great marketing statement I'm about to make, but they haven't performed well at World Championships at all. In comparison to the Ontario and the Heritage over the same period, they've performed extremely poorly.
Until all the work done by Richie Allenson and I guess Ian Murray.
And Colin Beashall. And look, it's really important for the listeners to understand that exactly the same hull, everything below the water, that was used by Ian Murray and Richie Allison and Colin Beashall in the 2019 Worlds that they won. It was the same package in the 2018 Worlds where they'd come 40-something. Right. The hull was exactly the same.
Right.
What had differed markedly was what was above the water. These guys essentially sat down one day after 18 Worlds. They were incredibly disappointed by the outcome and said, we're going to go through everything. And that is precisely what they did. They started at the front of the boat and they systematically moved backwards. They redesigned their sail package. They redesigned their mast package. They looked at weights. They really revolutionised the sail mast package in these boats. And we know that because it's now being replicated by everyone around the world. That's what's changed in these boats. That's the reality. You could have put those guys in any boat in that regatta, and I think this is almost uncontroversial. I've never heard anyone say anything different. They were always going to win it. These guys with GT and James Mayo and Tom Slingsby, they were at every single regatta around Australia. They were training numerous days throughout the week. They put in more work than I've ever seen. You know, it was an Olympic campaign. It was really impressive to watch. These guys were always going to win this.
It's okay. All right. So, from what we're saying is, and as a sailing coach or sailor and a coach, the work that went into those rigs is what jumped out at me before all this controversy stepped up. So, you know, I'm trying to stay unbiased and just give my views because I have no, I don't know what's the analogy. I've got no fish in this pond.
Jordan, if you, actually, I don't know how long ago, you did an interview of Ian and Richie and Colin, and you were talking about, well, they were talking, you were talking, and had asked a question about what they had thought been one of the most significant developments. And it surrounded the ability to get more four-state tension.
That's
100%. It's what you had talked about with them, and that was one of the predominant focuses. I mean, you have to bear in mind, you know,
it's Colin the weakness of the Etchell. Like when you look at an Etchell as an outsider looking in, like too much four-state sack. Go on. Sorry, I spoke over.
I was just going to say when you think about the experience of Colin Beashall and Ian Murray in relation to the star class, these guys, you know, what they brought in terms of looking at the mast was the same as what Richie Allison was able to do in terms of looking at the sail package. They essentially brought together a perfect team. And what Ian wanted to do and what Colin wanted to do with the mast, Richie was able to replicate in sail design. It was a really important combination. I think it's too easily overlooked because the reality is we've got, you know, a lot of people are in these boats. You don't see them winning every race. You know, they're not the rocket ship that they're built to be. Well, they're built out to be, is what I'm trying to say. They're just not. And, you know, anyone who's been doing the sailing that, you know, that BP and I have been doing over the last 6 months will tell you that, like any true competitive one design fleet, if you have a bad start and you miss the first shift, it's all over for you. It doesn't really matter what boat you're in. And a Mold 11 boat doesn't take you from a bad position to a really good position. I can attest that from what happened on Saturday.
All right. Okay, so the ruling, so there was all the heat coming out of the Northern Hemisphere against these boats.
Hey, Jordan, just again, sorry to jump in. And Burger's just, and this could be a controversial question and choose to answer or not, but the whole controversy, how much is this commercially driven?
I don't know, Bossy.
Like, there's clearly
Great question.
three builders in the world at the moment. Has it started because, one, of course, Big Fella and Colin and Richie won the Worlds, and everyone's now onto the AM boats? Is there something behind that?
One thing we know about the Etchells is that if a boat starts doing well, everyone seems to jump on it.
Yeah. Sure.
And it wasn't that long ago that it was the Ontario. Everyone was buying Ontarios.
Yep.
I'll give you an example. This boat, this Mould 11, was built in 2011. By 2016, only 5 boats had been built. Okay. It wasn't considered to be a very a popular package at the time. So everyone was jumping on Ontario, and then Heritage started doing. They started to do really, really well, and they made the boats look better. They looked at their systems, they looked at their whole package, and started doing well. And everyone started jumping on the Heritage boat. And there's only one reason you do that, because you think you're going to do better.
Yeah,
that's the only reason.
Good mental advantage.
Yeah, correct. You jump from one to the other for that very reason. So you saw someone like John Birchin jumping from an Ontario into a Heritage into a Mould 11 boat. All of these guys are just looking for that next thing, ultimately. Why is it that that people start jumping onto the Mould 11 boats? Well, to be honest, we know it's not the hull, because it's been the same hull that's been there for the last 10 years, which all you have to do is look at the statistics over the last 10 years, and we know as a fact that they underperform. So what is it? The answer at the end of the day is the package that the guys who are involved in putting these boats together, Richie Allenson, is putting together. The reality is that these boats have become a lot easier to sail because of the systems. They've become better to sail because of the mast sail packages. They're not an easy boat to sail at the best of times. Sorry, Etchells aren't a difficult boat to sail, but they're a difficult boat to sail consistently fast.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that one of the reasons for that is that it's too easy to get your head stuck in the boat, because you're trying to adjust things. You're looking at the sails. You're struggling to adjust the cap shroud, the lowers. You're trying to adjust the outhaul. It's just all too hard. You've got your head in the boat too much. What these guys have done, I'm talking about Richie and Colin and Ian, is to look at the systems to make it easier, so that things can be adjusted as you're sailing along very easily, so that you've got your head out of the boat. I mean, they're not rocket scientists. I mean, other guys have done it as well. But I just think at the moment they're doing it better than anyone else. And that's why I think there's an attraction to it. I mean, they've brought, they've brought a real energy into the class. And it's that energy has brought others into it. In Australia at the moment, despite everything going on, there's an energised class.
I must say, having enjoyed my 4.6 knots upwind on the odd weekend, every now and then, and seeing all the different boats, even just here down in Adelaide, the biggest one design element that really pisses me off, that should be one design, is the deck layout. Because everyone's doing something different now. It's all about barber hauling. It's about a traveller. It's about this. It's about that. And to me, regardless if your hull is 12 millimetre difference in the keel route or something like that, the deck layout, to me, should be the one design element. So that's just a point from my side. But there's a whole, like you're saying, Fergus, there's a whole lot more going on than just this controversy right now.
Well, I'll give you an example, Bryce. You sail on a boat that's got a pretty soft rig.
Yep.
A really soft rig. Carlin's in love with that mast, and he loves it in the light. He hates it in the heavy. What a great surprise.
Yep.
Because he can't get forced tension. He sails against someone next to him who's got a whale spar stiffer mast. All these boats are slightly different. They've all got their good days. They've all got their bad days. They've all got their sweet spots. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just not one thing. And, I could be proven wrong, but I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, it's got nothing to do with the hull.
Okay.
Well, I won't say nothing. It's got very little to do with the hulls.
Yeah. Okay. So the World Sailing have said it doesn't count as a mould because it's not registered. Is there any pathway where this mould gets re-registered?
Yeah. So, look, the Australian Association is working with the class to try to get mould 11 approved. And we are currently working on a protocol which will be a scanning protocol in order to scan a number of boats. We've been working the last little while to assemble a team of pretty reputable guys who we will ask to undertake this process on our behalf.
Is this an international team?
Say that again, sorry.
Is it an international team?
At the moment, it involves Sean Ritson, who is the chief measurer, or was the chief measurer at America's Cup we've just had, and chief measurer, I think, of various Volvo editions bicycle.
Right.
And one of the reasons we wanted Sean is not only he's a naval architect. He's been involved in America's Cup since 2000, and a lot of the America's Cup these days is about scanning. So his ability to understand what we're trying to achieve is very significant. We're involved in the Australian Institute of Sport to do the scanning on our behalf. And I think that's led by a fellow by the name of Ian Burns, who, again, I think has been associated with the America's Cup for the last, 8 or 9 editions. I think he was Team Oracle for 6 or 7 years. And we're using Grant Simmer as an overseeing consultant to this process. And what we're trying to do, and look, I think it's probably likely that Grant is going to bring other people into this as well, depending on what the analysis shows. What we're trying to do is create a situation which is completely arm's length from those who have an interest in this. The guys I've just mentioned have no interest in the outcome of this whatsoever. They are internationally recognised, and I don't know if you'll find 3 people who know more about this sort of stuff than these guys. And the idea is that we have presented them as being a team that we're looking to assemble who've got no association to the Australian Association in this sense. We do not expect for them to be advocates on our behalf. What we're asking them to do is undertake this process independently of us. We won't be involved in the process at all. We'll ask them to do the scanning, to analyse the scans, and then to ultimately tell us what the outcome is. And we think it's probably going to be one of 3 things. Either the scanning, which will be of a number of boats, not just Model 11. It'll be from boats from all 3 manufacturers through different iterations. It'll either show the boats to be pretty similar, it'll show them to be really different, or it'll show the Australian boat or another boat to be an outlier. And if it happens to be that the Australian boat is an outlier, then we'll accept that outcome. And then the next question will be, what do we do to fix this problem? Because we are all about a solution-based outcome here.
If it's not an outlier, Mark, the whole reason, though, that it's become an issue because it's not an approved mould.
Yep.
How do you come back from that one?
Yeah, so look...
Or is that all related or...
Under the building licence, getting approval from World Sailing involved doing 3 things. You had to build a boat from the mould, a prototype. You had to measure that boat. You had to photograph the boat being built, and you had to provide a laminate schedule. And that was it. That is what World Sailing has traditionally used in order to approve these boats. However, we also acknowledge and appreciate that, generally speaking, these boats or moulds were also being produced from a plug that had been around for a long time. So they kind of knew the devil they were dealing with. Here we're dealing with a different beast because of the way the class handled this back in 2010 with providing scans. So the idea is now that by looking more at the detail of the differences, if any, between these hulls, we start creating a picture for world sailing, which is we think you should prove the mould because ultimately the boats either are quite different, in other words, there's no reason not to approve it, or they're very similar. Again, there's no reason not to approve it. It's only if I think the Australian boat is an outlier that you run into issues such as, well, you can't approve this mould quite clearly. So what can we do to remedy the boats, and is it possible to remedy the mould?
Yeah.
If we can't find progress, what happens to the owners of these boats through no fault of their own?
Well, I'm a glass half full type of guy, Jordan, so I believe we will find progress with this because we are all committed. I'm talking about the Australian Association and the international class. We're committed to finding a positive outcome to this. It's something that has to be done systematically. The Etchells class is a wonderful class. And like you mentioned at the top of the show, all classes over their duration have some sort of controversy within them. And Etchells aren't a loner in that regard. We've had our controversies over the years as well, but this is a biggie, obviously. This is a real biggie. But we also recognise that for the class internationally to get through this problem, we need to find a solution to this current issue because, ultimately we can't afford not to. We can't afford not to. It's too easy in this modern world with moths and falling boats and kids looking at other alternatives to.
Well, the class can't afford to either, right? Because 50% of the members of the international class are Aussies. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. At the moment, it just so happens that the Etchells are doing pretty well in Australia. And as I said, there's a lot of energy in the fleet at the moment, or the fleets within Australia. But it's important to recognise that, I find it hard to foresee a situation where we can't find an outcome to this problem. We're talking about boats. We're talking about something that is not exactly overly difficult, in my humble view, biasy to modify if need be. It's about people thinking outside the square. It's about finding solutions. The egos, the bias, everything has to fall away to allow this to work. And people need to let the experts do their thing. We need to be patient with what they're doing and be prepared, perhaps to compromise. Perhaps the owners of the boats will have to modify their boats. I hope they don't have to, but that might be something they need to do down the track. So be it. We'll work that out. But I don't foresee a situation necessarily where the end result here is we lose 25 boats. I think that is currently beyond my comprehension.
So, Mark, you're a barrister by trade.
Coffee maker, yep.
Barista. We love them all. And now you've got so much knowledge. Well, president of Etchells in Australia, and you've just had to take on so much knowledge here. You're a yachty. Do you ever think you're going to get involved so technically? Have you enjoyed this? Obviously, it's been pretty bad, but it's a bit of a journey in itself.
Yeah, so look, a couple of things, Bicey. I have to be surrounded by a brilliant team. When people say it's just not one person, when it comes to the team of people that I work with on the Australian Executive, I can't sing their praises loud enough. Yes, I take the brunt of it. Yes, I'm the one that tends to get the nasty emails in the middle of the night because I'm the one that's signing the letters. But I've got a pretty good team behind me that helps out. It is, it's time consuming. In answer to your question, no. when I agreed to take this role, and the person selling it to me said, in response to a question, look, how much time do you think it will take per week? The response to him was, not more than a few hours. And I would say that since all of this saga, and it has been a saga, started back in June of last year, I would say that I'm spending anywhere between 10 and 20 hours a week on it.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's pretty full on.
Time consuming, yeah. Sure.
So in your responses just before, Mark, you were quite open, forthcoming, wanting to work with people to find resolution. So you're goal orientated in the way you presented that to create a positive outcome for the class. I want to phrase this carefully. Are you getting the same back from other members of the class? Are most people like that? Are there people? Is there some potential? Not people. Let's just say, are there potential sticking points that could stop that at the moment, or does everyone have the same attitude you do?
Can I answer that in a couple of parts? Number one is that I think everyone sees the importance of having a solution to this ultimate problem. Where we differ slightly is what some people see as being the solution. You've got, on one end of the spectrum, the camp that simply wants to say, mould 11 boats, just go. The mould goes.
There's just so much danger in that. I just can't. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
No. Look, we'll come back to that. But so you've got that extreme, and then on the other spectrum, you've got people who say there must be a solution to this problem. We can't accept that you would simply take 25 boats and trash them. And look, I'm in that camp. I can't accept for one moment that we can't find a solution. It doesn't make logical sense to me. And I don't really care, to be honest, what the history was. I don't really care. One of you guys had asked me earlier tonight, was it done intentionally? And I didn't answer that question. And I didn't answer it, on purpose because I don't know, and I don't think it's relevant. Because ultimately what I want to do here is come out of this on the other side with 25 owners who are back on the water as soon as possible, either in their current boat or in a modified boat. And this will all become a nasty nightmare in the history of the class, but we have to be able to use this to learn from our mistakes, because one thing is absolutely certain: this class has made some terrible mistakes along this journey, some really bad mistakes, and we have to, if we're going to survive, in a way that will result in our evolution, we must learn from those mistakes.
So we get emails and we have been told, there's always, I can't tell you how many allegations have just turned up about different boats and different things. Yeah. If the class goes down this path, is the class ready for the potential consequences if the whole fleet's audited to discover there's people out there that wouldn't want their boats measured from what emails we've been sent. Is the class, if this continues down this pathway, which it seems it's going to, the class is going to be, it's going to be quite scary.
Does it introduce a precedence that every single boat will be audited?
When you read the World Sailing ruling, which you guys did, there was nothing overly controversial within it. Essentially what they said was that you need to comply with the class rules. If you don't comply with the class rules, you're not eligible to race. That is the message from that ruling. It's nothing that wasn't expected. The class has responded to that by saying, well, in accordance with that ruling, because there must be registered moulds, and World Sailing can't find records that shows that this mould was registered, therefore the boats aren't class compliant, therefore we must not permit them to race at this stage.
At this stage.
So in answer to your question, Bicey and Jordan, yes, there is an audit going on at the moment. They're looking into various aspects of the class. I think that's a healthy thing, by the way. People shouldn't be concerned about the audit. If anything, what this should be hopefully reinforcing is the fact that for our class to survive in the modern era, we have to modernise. One of the things you opened about at the top of the show was you talked about the class had the potential here to implode. And I think that that has to be something which we recognise has been the worst case result if we don't fix what we're doing. Before we started this, I was trying to think about the question you might ask is, why has all of this happened? What is this the product really of? And I've been in sailing, for a good part of 45 years and in various classes. And it seems to me with the older classes, it's always exactly the same thing, which is the rules were written, the class rules were written at a time that a lot of things weren't contemplated and they never keep up with advances. And so our original class rules, which allowed for these huge tolerances that we've been talking about, have never been amended or thought about since that time. 30 millimetres in relation to this particular station for boats coming from a mould in modern manufacturing practices is ridiculously large, but it exists. And so what this has, I think, one of the lessons it's really taught us is that we need to look at the rules in a modern way and to, I think, rewrite the entire rules in order to deal with the situations we're currently dealing with, which you're seeing in your emails. Because at the moment, people keep pushing and pushing and pushing because it's within the rules in sometimes a bit of a grey sort of way. It's in the past created some problems and it will create problems in the future unless we get on top of that. And the class is, one of the things they're doing currently in the order is to look at the rules and to try and work through, because you've got this problem. Okay, so we've got boats that have been, which are now 50 years old, and all of these boats are slightly different. And, some have recesses, some don't have recesses. Some have this, some have that. And let's, for instance, say that you identify things which aren't currently legal under the rules, but it's been done by and exists on half the boats out there. It would be a problem to simply say, well, we're going to outlaw that now. Because what do you do with those boats that have already gone down that particular pathway? And the reason it's happened is because the rules weren't strict enough or they weren't policed enough to stop this sort of practice occurring. So someone much smarter than me has to work out a way to amend or to rewrite our rules that will accommodate some problems that exist within our class at the moment in relation to certain boats or class of boats doing certain things in order to tighten that up and to stop it occurring.
Yeah, excellent point. Absolutely brilliant point. The first consequence of this is about to play out. We've got what is traditionally the midwinters out of the most beautiful place in the world, Mooloolaba, but now is, because of COVID, is now the Australian and at the same time, an extra day, the Australasian Championships. So there's two regattas being held up on the Sunshine Coast in June, I think it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, Queen's birthday weekend.
By the way, Jordan, we're staying at your house. Be prepared.
Oh, well, boss, I've got some. I've thought about that. I'll just while you diverted me. Obviously, you and Kaylin being the two principals behind Defenders Oz, Land Rover Defenders, you'll be towing your Etchell up.
Or there's a fair chance we won't make it.
Behind the back of a Defender. And
I'll be leaving in April.
And given that the Suez Canal is completely blocked, there's not enough oil in the country for you to make it up.
Bravo. It's a good one.
So
you had that written down, didn't you?
I worked on that one, yeah. We're going to see the first regatta where those boats aren't allowed to sail.
Yep.
So, therefore, we are going to have some very upset owners, and this is the potential future of the class. There's 25 owners out there, and I'm thinking of it from their perspective, who've invested a lot of money in buying their boat that's their pride and joy, and through no fault of their own, they're going to suffer. And the class has to find a solution for those 25 people. And if the class doesn't, then I think the implosion comes. That's where I think, because the pushback will come hard, whatever that pushback will look like. But, I'm sure you're not the only lawyer in the fleet, Mark.
The most disappointing thing, and this is coming from my side of it, where I've had my first year in Etchells and experienced a damn exciting and also extremely difficult year of sailing in terms of on the water. We're going to lose from the fleet, just in the top 10 or top 12 of this fleet at the moment. There's 7 or 8 Olympians. There's a handful of gold medalists, and there's world champions, and then of course is John Bertrand. I mean, this is going to affect the fleet at that level, and that's the problem I'm seeing, is because this year has been, for my sailing, has been unbelievable. I'm not a gold medalist, I'm not a world champion, but I'm sailing with these guys because of these boats, and because of the push that's been going on in Australia. And now all of a sudden, it's gone. Now, obviously, Mark and I and the other owners of these boats, we're talking about options. But the problem is that it has been a wonderful year of sailing. And that's all there is to it. We've been beaten comprehensively on days by boats in the 800s and in the 900s, just like Saturday, Mark.
Yeah.
We went out and we got a 3rd or 4th in the first race, and we're battling with the big guys, and in the second race we got dwarfed. And it happens. It's how you sail the boats as well, and that's what I'm trying to say.
So, look, in response to that, BP, I agree with you. It's perhaps been one of the most enjoyable seasons of sailing I've ever had. Yes, the results have come, but, I've had the privilege of having all these Olympic and their kids, generally speaking, besides Belcher. Matty Ryan, Will Ryan, I think's 31 or 32 now, but other than that, they're, kids, and they had an opportunity to get involved in the Etchells because they had no other sailing to do. And Victor Kovalenko was right behind it. He saw an opportunity for these guys to get involved in some really tight competition. And, I think they came along initially thinking, sailing with some old guys. This isn't going to be, it's good practice, but it won't be what we used to. Well, I think by the end of the season, we have more than changed their mind in relation to the competitiveness of these boats. BP, as you know, John Bertrand on Saturday sailed with Maddie Wern and a couple of the Australian sailing Olympic girls. And I think throughout this season so far, we've had nearly the entire Olympic team at one point or another sailing with us. Richie Allison had one of the New Zealand laser sailors with him.
Correct.
And what we have seen is an amazing pool of talent coming into the Sydney the Sydney Etchells fleet, of people just wanting to get involved.
But what it's done.
And so in answer to your question, though, and this is something that, the owners have talked about, yes, it's disappointing that we're not going to the Lullaby. Absolutely. But I've made a point of telling Lammy and Will Ryan that I still want them to go to Mooloolaba. I still want them to sail on other boats. And I want all of the Olympic people to have that opportunity to go up to Mooloolaba and sail on other people's boats if they can, because I think that's the best thing for the class. It's not the greatest thing for the owners of Mold 11 boats, but look, we'll get through that, and we'll look towards the next good thing to happen. But I don't want this to reflect poorly on Mooloolaba.
Having a chat with a few of the guys, who have been sailing Etchells for a long time, they're all saying, though, that this year has made them improve and made them focus on getting faster, because otherwise they were just always going out there and they were going to struggle. Like, the Gardo of the fleet, and those people, they have all improved their sailing and focused on so many different things that they were never focusing on before. And I think where this is going to lead, if it does end up where these boats are, taken out of the fleet, that it's going to go back to that, where it's just going to be,
Well, BP, we have to stop that, obviously. That has to be one of our primary aims, is to maintain the fantastic energy that we've had this last 12 months.
Yeah.
As you know, there was Rico on board with GT on Saturday, and Rico wouldn't have been on an Etchell for 8-9 years.
Yeah.
I had to talk to him afterwards. He said, he wants to get back in it. He's been in Singapore for a while, but he said, these are the best boats still. He had a ball. And, if somehow we can keep this energy going while we're dealing with this problem, then I think that would be kudos to the Mold 11 owners. It would be kudos to the various fleets. Obviously, I keep talking about Sydney because that's where the largest concentration of the Mold 11 boats exist. They're all over Australia, but the biggest concentration is in Sydney. So in terms of those who are going to miss out on Mooloolaba and the Nationals, it really affects, I guess, the Sydney fleet more than anyone else.
Hey, worst case scenario, Mold 11, on completely. There's no resolution. $2.5 million. What's a hull worth? Like 100 grand, say? And then you transfer all your gear. So all of those 25 aren't sailing. So let's say 15 are or 12 are. Is it a $1 million problem, $2 million problem?
There's around about 250 man hours in fitting these boats out.
Yeah.
So even if let's say worst case scenario, Biasy, that the hulls have to be destroyed. Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And you go through a process of saying, okay, we're going to potentially build a new mould, and we're going to put the old decks on new hulls.
Yeah.
And we're going to put the keels back on, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds easy enough, but as you know, that's a immensely involved exercise, trying to match a deck with a hull, and it's the man hours. I think suggesting that it's 100,000 per boat is probably underselling it quite a lot.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
Right. Well.
So therefore, we can't have that as a solution. We need to find a better solution.
No, absolutely. And like I said, that like as a total worst case scenario, and yeah, it's pretty clear that cannot be the solution.
And look, before I gave you you were talking about the emails you're receiving, and I said, look, there's two groups out there: the group that just wants to get rid of the boats, and there's my camp who wants to work out a solution. I think that a lot of people who are now weighing into this discussion, one of the problems is that it is really complex. I know you guys have been doing some research, obviously, to get ready for tonight, and that you've read a lot of the communications that currently exist, the documents online, but it's not necessarily easy to understand, A, how this has occurred, and B, what the problem is. And it's easy to have a view, but to have an informed view is quite different. And, I think in some respects, all it takes is your mate to say, look, these boats are illegal because they're, I think to use the expression Jordan did, they're flatter, fuller in the ends, and longer. And that's all people hear. And they say, right, they must be cheater boats. And that's it. It is so much more complex than that. It's, as you guys have come to learn, it really is a difficult problem, which has many elements to it. And that's why we've come to the view that the best solution here is to get, the best of experts involved. And for me to step back and to try and stop telling the story, because ultimately people say, even about tonight, people are simply going to say, I've just been spinning it in a way to put forward the best case for the Australian Association or for the Australian boats. And look, in some part, they might be right. I mean, I am invested in this in the sense that I've been doing this for the last 9 months, and I've read so much, and I genuinely believe what I read and what I'm saying to be true. But so will the people in the other camp. the guys you bring into the show later on to talk about this are going to be talking as passionately as I am about the other side. And that's because people have got their own perceptions as to facts. And I think that in many respects is where the danger lies here. And it's why everyone needs to step back and say, do you know what? Let's leave this to a group of people who aren't in either camp, who can just give us their expert analysis in relation to what are really hard questions. And let's all agree to abide by that.
I can guarantee you one thing, Burgers. Don't leave it to us on Bar Karate.
If they don't leave it to us on Bar Karate.
I've got to say that group that you've assembled sounds pretty spot on. I think there's a lot of wisdom, and that decision's probably going to be the lifesaver for the class, I would suspect, because it's going to be hard for anyone to argue with what comes out of that little
It's going to be huge what comes out of it, Jay. And, and the thing that I sort of have been thinking about is, when they do this, I mean, they're going to see these discrepancies. I'm sure they're going to find them, and they're going to go, well, what is an Etchell?
Yeah.
And that's the big question in the end of it.
Yeah.
And, not that long ago I was talking about that there's an ideological question to be answered here of what an Etchell is. And when you go through the class documents, and anyone who cares to look will find all these class documents online and on the international side, there's a number of reports going back to 2005 where people back then were actually asking the same question. So they did the initial scanning in 05, 06, and the guy that was running it back then was actually asking the class to try and determine what is an Etchells, because he was identifying even back then, well before Model 11, there was discrepancies between the boats.
Yeah.
So this has been a problem which has been around for a lot of years. I think the issue is no one really knows what the answer is. And we can't ask Skip Etchells anymore what the answer is. And ultimately, I think our experts are going to say whatever they find, and then they're going to ask the question, well, this is what we found, but you guys ultimately need to weigh in somehow in relation to identifying what difference is too much or too little.
Rightio. Final question from me, Burgers.
Yeah.
Where do you stand here in relation to the international committee as the Australian president? How does that work? Like, is this basically the point of discussion at each meeting? Do you have a seat at the table with the International Etchell Association?
No. So the class is governed by a group of governors which have representation from the various countries around the world, and we've got within the I think I could be wrong here, but I think there's 11 or 12 people on that governing committee, of which 3 are representatives of Australia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was talking to one the other day. Cool. All right. Well, I think we have got some idea. I think the candour and the information is much appreciated for those who are listening and interested. I think there will be some value there. I suspect for some listeners they will be quite still very, very upset. But the language is definitely about pulling the class back together, coming back from the cliff face and moving forward, which is the only smart thing to do. I think as a non-Etchell sailor, as a person looking from the outside, we don't want the Etchells to go away. So, yep, let's hope. And I think the decision to get those guys together is the smart move. So,
and look, Jordan, at the end of the day, I agree with you. The people will hear what I've said, and they're still going to be very upset. But the reality is we can't unring the bell. What has happened in the past has happened. And the only 2 options here is to move forward collectively and to find a solution where our great class continues, or we blow it up. And that's senseless. There's only one solution, which is to
move forward.
As I said, put egos aside, accept that people are going to be upset, work out how to ensure that we never go through this again, and move forward.
Yep.
Otherwise, poor old Bice, he's going to have to do something else on his Saturdays other than going 4.7 knots upwind.
Well,
hey, Bice, just out of interest, 4.7 knots upwind in Etchells versus what, 25 k's an hour in your vehicle?
In the Series 1. It's about the same.
About the same windage.
Jet against the wall.
No, as a matter of fact, Mark, we've actually decided to sail the boat to Perth. It'll get there quicker.
I tell you what, part of that journey to Mooloolaba, you might only be going about 4.7 knots into the wind.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks for your time, Mark. We'll be looking forward to chatting some more, I suspect.
Pleasure. Thanks, boys.
Best of luck, eh?
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Bloody hell, fellas. Got kind of serious.
BP
Probably that was our 23% serious.
making the
seriousness
for BP,
for the whole time.
As I said at the start of the show, we had 4% left. I'm pretty sure we've used it.
Yeah.
No,
but it is an issue that needed to be addressed. Not an issue, just a topic.
massive, mate.
Mate, and I didn't say it during the speaking of the beggars, and having sailed Etchells, mate, they're such a cool class. Yeah. And I really, really do not hope this brings the class down, brings them to their knees.
The thing is, we covered this last year with the lasers and what was going on there, and that was controversial. There was a bunch of stuff going on, and I know that we didn't know the insides of it as much as, there was obviously things going on. But it's the same with this. There's just so much going on. I don't think we'll ever really know the inside of it, but we're trying to get as much as possible out. And I guess the most important thing is that, as Mark said, that they're trying to resolve it. Move forward, make it happen.
Yeah,
you got to. Anybody that's involved in this has to put themselves in the place of one of those 25 owners that owns a boat and understand it.
So that was actually when I was asking Mark whether he's a barista and he can do a fine latte.
Cafe au lait in front.
No, but as a barrister, right, he's dealing with all this shit every single day. How much... and he deals with stuff that make, that change lives. And I didn't ask this question, but we're talking about yacht racing, man.
I know.
We're talking about our sport, our hobby, our fun.
Yep.
And
their fun, and the owner's fun.
The owner's fun, absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. And
we're not curing cancer here.
No, you're right.
Surely there has to be an answer.
Yeah,
can you see the answer, Jordan?
Well, I don't. Well, I can see an answer, but I don't know enough. I may be slightly uninformed, and I'm not willing to say. I know what's going to come out. There's only one rational solution, and we'll let that come out. But we'll try and get somebody that's quite opposed on the other side. I'm not quite sure who. Actually, if you are a listener and you want an alternate view put forward, just tell us who you reckon would be the best person to speak. I'd probably get someone quite mature with some legal training to come on so no one gets in trouble. But beyond that, reach out to us and tell us someone that you want to put forward a view. But solution, working towards solution.
I think it all stands and is going to be is relying upon this effective audit that's been called, and that the official measurement of these boats is going to come into play, and that's the only thing we can do. We can wait for that, and then they'll say, "Well, here we are. This is what we've got."
All right.
Right at the moment, we don't have it. That's the point.
Let's move on.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
At the top of the show, I said on Friday the Brisbane to Gladstone starts coming up, live stream. Get on, it's going to be awesome to watch. at exactly.
Listen to.
Watch, not listen to.
Yeah, no, don't worry about me. Yeah, turn it down. And well, actually, if you don't like my voice, Nick Douglas will be on. Grant Cooper. There's other voices. But,
So Webex, Grant Cooper, actually, just going back, I grew up listening to him on 5CC in Port Lincoln. He was the morning presenter.
Morning show.
Yep.
5cc.
And so
it's like half as good as 10cc.
But it's going to be good, listeners. Tune in. Get part of it.
Okay. Well, I wasn't trying to plug that. I was trying to actually create a segue for the Taipan Formula 16 showdown, which is occurring almost at exactly the same time in Toukley in New South Wales. BP, I think you're going up to have a bit of a look for that.
Working hard to get there. I've got family in tow, so I'm trying to get that sorted.
But the challenge show, the off the beach challenge, the catwhackers have come hard, and they're putting their money where their mouths are, and they're going to try and prove which boat is the greatest. So it'll be a ton of fun. So we haven't forgot that.
So
we'll cover that.
Have we got feedback, gents, from are they going to give the Jordan Spencer Pursuit race a go?
Oh, actually, I didn't know. Was that BP? They said?
I haven't spoken to them at all this week or last week, I should say. So we're working on that at the moment. I guess at the moment they're all up there preparing for their own events, but they're pretty psyched.
Hey, their own event.
Yeah,
it's our event.
Yeah,
mate, you own it. You own this thing. Just tell them this is what's going on, gents. You have to go. We'll do the Pursuit race 1. They'll do Windward Lords. Then, as Bo had suggested, they need to take out their girlfriends. They need to have a little lazy leg over at the wing mark.
What is that?
And that is the ultimate off the beach boat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's not all about over the line at the end.
No, there's a lot of disciplines, but no, they're pretty amped and they're pretty excited about it. I think there's going to be some interesting outcomes, that's for sure.
All right. It'll be fun. There is some actual sailing going on in Europe at the moment. The Lanzarote Winter Regatta has been happening. So if you're a 49er fan or a NACRA fan, that has been happening. If you want to go and have a bit of a look, they've got a bit of information out there. But Diego Boatin and Iago Lopez in the 49ers took the win over the Danish guys, Jonas Warrer and Jakob Jensen, and then Rob Dickinson and Sean Waterlove in third. And Martine in the women's.
Dickinson and Waterlove.
Waterlove, that's it. Martine Grail and Kahina Kunz, our friends from Brazil in the women, in front of Annemieke Beckering and Annette Jutz, and then Tamara Eshigoyen and Paula Bacello. Tamara, come on the show. She's scared to come on the show. We've been talking to her a lot. We're good friends with Tamara, but congratulations to those guys. And then NACRA 17s. Oh, here we go.
Names.
Nah.
Come on, you can do it.
Don't bother.
Navier Armas and Florian Trittle against Paul Koloff and Alicia Stumler. And Quen Delepierre and Manon Udine.
And Jono.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But there's some good racing going on there. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention because the Olympic classes and some selection happening around that. The question it leads to is the Olympics going ahead? That was the whole point of putting that up, to let people know the same.
Cannot see it happening.
Cannot see it happening.
The pyjamas are still up. I have heard the pyjamas are still up.
Boats. I have seen boats going into containers and being sent off to Japan.
Well, of course, you would do that, right? Mm-hmm. In anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
But is it really going to happen? I know the Japanese, the president, he has said 100%, but no viewers, no family,
no international
travel apart from athletes.
Yep.
And all the other people who make it happen. For example, the media teams are all being assembled right now. Phones are ringing. Are you willing to come to Japan and help with the media coverage.
Is that something that you've received a phone call for, Jake?
Oh, it's not about me, BP. I'm just saying that the media teams, I can state with 100% clarity and certainty, are being assembled at the moment.
So, all right, if that's the case, so hypothetically, Jordan, you've got the call up. What do you need to do? You need a COVID test?
That's exactly right. So that's what I'm interested in.
You need to go into quarantine in Japan.
Do you get your vaccine before you go? Do you quarantine? And I assume you have to quarantine coming home. Like it's a massive commitment.
So potentially
you're out for 5 weeks.
You've got a phone call, right?
Hypothetically.
Then you have to get a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Japan, quarantine 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You do the gig 2 weeks. Come home, quarantine 2 weeks. 6 weeks out of your life.
It's not worth it, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you still get to do
your
that.
wife doesn't think so.
Well, anyway, it's going to Japan would be a ton of fun. Get to go to the Olympics with no spectators, and I'd be intrigued as to how that would go on. But it'll be interesting. Where I live, the head of the person in charge of the vaccine rollout, she's a sailor, and I literally was on a boat with her today, just doing a bit of work with her sailing, and she said, I've had the first part of my vaccine already, and I said, oh, good on you. You know, you're in charge. Who should I make get first? So you're self-injecting straight away. And my response was, surely your first thing was to get all the really, really, really good-looking people vaccinated straight away? And,
yeah.
And she
said, yes, I have. That's why I haven't got yours.
got me a beauty. I thought it was funny, and she shut me down. So, yeah, we still don't know. Still don't know. Do we want it to go ahead? Do you guys want it to see it?
We do, definitely. Okay. Well, I certainly do.
Yep.
Do I care? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
love dinghy sailing. It's my passion.
I seriously love the fact and the discussions that we've had with our Aussie sailing teammates.
Absolutely.
And all the other Olympians we chat to. Yeah.
But I was just about to say, I was speaking to Will Ryan the other day, and they're just about, they're ready to go.
They must be so toey.
They're looking at going to Europe. It hasn't been confirmed, but they are looking to go to Europe for just to get some events under their belt. But in this crazy sort of period of setting this whole program up, it's going to be so interesting to see how they go. I mean, if they can pull off a win from this, I mean, it's over and above, isn't it?
Yeah. It is interesting. I hope. I want to see it. I want to watch more sailing. The more sailing we have on, the better. It's all good. And yeah, all right. Millennial Cup. The Millennium Cup kicks off today in New Zealand, boys. Are you aware of this? So offshore bit of yacht racing going on in New Zealand, 3-day regatta, a big one. So for our Kiwi mates, kia ora, bro. And yeah, so ORC, their new handicap scoring method for the super yachts, the Ocean Racing Conference measure. There's going to be a bunch of, it's like pretty much the New Zealand offshore keelboat.
Millennial Cup was built off the back of the 03 Cup, or 2000 Cup actually,
2000
with all the super yachts, but limited super yachts. So I'm not sure how many are there.
Well, yeah, there was. I think the last one in last year or the year before was there was about 5 boats. So we'll see. I don't know. I haven't seen the entry list for this year.
Well, I mean, the good thing about big boats is often they crash into each other and they provide some pretty spectacular footage.
Good thing about big boats that you could have probably 1,000 Etchells, but one big boat pays for the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you're a J24 fan, the World Champs set for the UK in September have been cancelled.
Okay.
Shit.
Bugger.
Shizer.
With the Etchells and then them now being cancelled, my life's just about worth ending.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, no. Do you want to talk, mate?
J24s are a big part of it.
Do we want to talk about this little note that came out from Joella talking about trying to maintain weight in the 470 class for the Olympics? Did you guys have a look at that one?
Yeah, I got across that a little bit, but in saying that, basically the what was put out there was people were dipping weights, they were dieting to extremes to essentially do the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
But what's unusual about that?
Well,
exactly.
Because there was unhealthy behaviour.
What is we do it in Etchells, we do it in everything.
No, there was unhealthy behaviours.
And other sports do it as well, like jockey, horse racing, car racing, any other competitive sport for sure deals with it. But I've actually recently taken up golf, and I can confirm golf is not part of that.
You're doing a lot of extra walking though, from what I've been told.
Well, yeah, definitely into the sand dunes.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to put that on our little discussion point was that humans are getting bigger, and the Olympic classes are for small people, like seriously small people nowadays. So
humans are getting bigger, did you say?
Humans are, they're getting bigger. Evolution. So is it time? Is the 470 too small? Because you've got to be super. You've got to be super slim. Like you're running very lean human beings to race the 470. Should we step it up?
What are we looking at? We got Matt, who's
Matt Belch. You talking about?
Yeah,
they're around 72, 75,
65 kilos. Will clocking in at 70.
He's big now. He's overweight now. He's way overweight. He's going to have to dump another 5 or 6 yet. Yeah. But he's nearly 6 foot tall.
I thought he was taller than that. I thought he was taller than that.
No, but basically, no gentleman should be weighing in at 65 kilos.
No, you're right. But you only got to look at Formula One drivers. I think I've seen Drive to Survive the other night.
Yeah.
Whole lot in one go because it was raining in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I saw Ricciardo jump on the scales and get all excited because he touched 50. I mean, come on.
50?
No.
It's got to be more than that. Anyway, my argument, and I'm not biased at all, Olympic classes are too small. They're too small for midgets. It's the underdeveloped sailing regatta.
Underdeveloped sailing regatta.
No, to all our Olympic friends, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's just, but maybe we're going to have to start thinking about it. World Sailing is going to have to start thinking about it soon because
we just design boats. We need bigger people.
So what's next then?
Well, I don't know.
What replaces 470?
Well, it's obvious, but they won't take it.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. I am Etchell.
Yeah, no, the 5-0. But the 5-0 will say no.
Sharpie.
Yeah, Sharpie. There you go, Sharpie. Let's get back to what we should do is try and decide what the best off-the-beach dinghy class is, and then that becomes they become the Olympic classes.
And I must admit, no, we'll talk about it.
We'll do another
on another show. But
we're running along.
Carry on.
We're running along. Second last thing I wanted to bring in, and a bit of excitement. We're very good friends with most of the people in this team, but the Denmark Sail GP announced their crew for this season 2, their season 2, which is good because Nikolai still in charge. Pretty much similar with all the blokes on the team. World's most handsome sailor, Tom Johnson, not the most favourable photo of you, Tomby, in the fly. But, gentlemen, their 2 females they have announced, Danish Olympic medalist Anne-Marie Rindom, friend of the show, and we're big fans of Anne-Marie, so congratulations. And Katja Salskov Iversen, who most of you will know as part of the team that sailed with Jenna May Hansen in the 49er FX class, and they won an Olympic medal, I think a bronze medal at the world. So I'm just trying to remember what they got. But anyway, so they're the two. And just while we're talking about Jenna, she's just about to pop a baby out. So we're thinking of you, Jenna. So, no, come on.
Yeah.
What are you smirking for?
Here.
Indeed.
No, bravo, as they say in Europe. But moving on to other things, Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Easter next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Is it our 100th episode?
Oh, yep. It is. Is that
who is our guest?
Don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Oh, no, I was trying to trigger. No. But Easter weekend next weekend, our 100th.
I've got
episode.
No idea how we're going to record. Oh no, this Easter will be right for this one coming up. But yeah, our 100th episode over Easter. Yeah,
we've got no serious.
I know where you're going, Bice. I can read your mind. I think I know where you're going.
We've got no seriousness left in the bank, by the way.
Okay, all right. Well,
just let you. I mean, I'm really on my data right now.
Okay,
it's at the end. You can't do it.
All right. Yeah, well, we're going to try. We have booked, but things always can be variable. We have booked one of the greats of all time. We wanted to celebrate. So it might be my dad. You never know.
It might be my mum.
Your mum. She's a fan of the show.
It could be Jill and Jan.
Could be.
Jan on.
Get all our mums on.
Yeah. Oh, what a good idea. God, that show would go forever.
World's most,
Yeah, but unfortunately, it won't be our mums.
No.
It's going to be one of the best, and I am seriously pumped. So,
looking forward to it.
The last thing I do want to bring up is beer. What do I want to say? To all those people from all around the world that keep asking us when we're going to send it, because we put a little note on the on our Facebook and Instagram page stating that we got 100 cases back because events not going ahead, so we have to get rid of them pretty quickly, so we're not stuck with lots of beer. And all the people from all around the world came hard at us and saying, can we have it here? Can I have it in Spain? Can I have it in the US? Can I have it in New Zealand? Yeah. From everywhere, basically. Yeah. Blame your governments, all right? The excises and the difficulties we have to go through to get it to you guys, it's not our fault. We're desperately trying, but there's just so much effort involved to send alcohol across the globe. So whilst we love your enthusiasm, and I mean, we've got serious enthusiasm. That Spinnaker, we'll have to talk about, John. We'll leave that for another show. But yeah, and for those who are in Australia who we can get beer to, we got a pretty strong response to. We've had 100 cases. We've probably got 70 of those left, I reckon, currently.
I need you urgently to send some more down. I'm wiped out. Yeah,
we're going to organise that in a sec. So hit us up pretty hard. We think they'll go pretty quick, but for those who are supporting us and the yacht clubs are supporting us, really thank you. But just keep doing it. Otherwise, we have to show a major brewer real interest in this stuff or it won't happen. So that's the stage we're at. So please just hit us up. Cheers at Barkarati, or just look on the Facebook page. You'll see there's a little post there talking with all our contact details. But come and grab some beer off us. Otherwise, I'm going to have a big party.
Here.
Yeah, that's it. It's
you deserve it.
Oh, yeah, sure,
mate. You do deserve it, Jay.
Oh, shut up, you idiot. Oh, dear. We all are happy. Well, lads, that was a different show. We have probably done the longest show ever, I reckon, so apologies for the fans who like it to keep us short, but hopefully it was worthwhile listening. I think if you're a non-Etchell sailor and listen to this, there's a lesson for every single class out there. I think this whole thing is a lesson for every class.
I agree with that. But I think also there's a lesson for seeing how this is resolved.
Yeah.
And we'll know very soon.
Exactly right, BP. You're 100% right.
It could be a bit of a template moving forward for all classes. I think that's really important.
And, yeah. I think you got it wrong, Bicey, when you said don't get the boys from Barker 80 involved. There's a bit of expertise, at least with a couple of you in this group. So we'll see.
No, mate. Definitely don't get us involved.
Keep them well clear. We just like to go yachting.
It'll be a sculling competition. All right, whoever wins.
We just like to go yachting. Righto, job done.
All right. See you, lads. See you, everyone. I hope you still enjoy the show. Let us know what you think. Love your work and enjoy life. Be safe. Go on, Pete.